Welcome to the Korea Pro podcast. I'm your host, Jeongmin Kim, the editorial director of Korea Pro.
And I'm John Lee, the editor of Korea Pro.
Join us for a weekly 15-minute conversation as we dive into the most pressing stories shaping South Korea and dissect the most complicated ones for you.
From politics to culture, technology to society, we've got you covered. So stay ahead of the curve and never be sidelined again.
So get ready for a fresh perspective on South Korea's news. This is the Korea Pro podcast.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Korea Pro podcast. It is now Thursday, October 31st, last day of October. I'm your co-host, John.
And I'm Jeongmin.
And welcome to the Korea Pro podcast, everyone. We've got a lot of things to discuss. Now, I wasn't here last week, but you and Chuna were talking quite a bit about the latest updates going on in Ukraine, and this is still an ongoing thing. Mm-hmm. Could you catch us up as to what's been going on in South Korea recently?
I'm just going to briefly mention some of the new things. These are still very subtle things coming out of South Korea. It's nothing set in stone or clearly announced. But there were a few high-level officials in South Korea, some in National Security Office, some in the Defense Ministry, going further into the potential details of the weapons provision for Ukraine. They did not announce anything like, we will send this type of weapon when, but it seems like they are being gung-ho about this concept of defensive versus offensive weapons rather than talking about lethal weapons, which they kicked off saying that lethal weapons is emotionally charged word, so they're going to go for defensive and offensive. It seems like this is to sort of circumvent the existing laws in South Korea that could be interpreted as a prohibition against lethal weapons that could be used in conflict zone. Anyways, so far, yesterday, the presidential office official in a briefing mentioned that if we do provide Ukraine weapons for Ukraine in close future, we will have to start with defensive weapons, which will be, they said, common sense.
They did say that it was common sense, but it's also true that they're not going to give out any details just yet. The U.S. elections is just about a week away, and depending on who wins, the U.S. policy will change, and South Korea is going to really have to reflect U.S. policy. So, it makes sense that South Korea is not giving out a lot of details right now, but this is an ongoing and developing story, and I'm sure this is not the last time you'll be talking about this.
Right, and also South Korea has to manage expectations from North Korea, Russia as well. They cannot provide everything all at once at the same time. They have to keep an eye on what North Korea is actually doing in Ukraine or where. So it seems like they are going to stay quiet until we hear more about what kind of troops or what kind of tasks that they will be given in Ukraine, and then South Korea may decide on and announce further. And another new thing is South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol had a phone call with Zelensky, and they discussed potentially Ukraine sending an envoy to Seoul sometimes potentially next week, it seems.
Well, this week is almost over.
Right. And it seems like they will not only discuss the potential weapons provisions, but also how they can coordinate and cooperate when it comes to South Korea sending a monitoring team. This last time when we were recording it was reportedly, but now it's confirmed that South Korea is planning to potentially send a team. It seems like it's unclear which level or from which department, like it's going to be Defense Ministry or the NIS. It's not clear. But it seems like the general consensus is that whichever department, it has to be someone who is good with information warfare, psychological warfare, someone who is able to interrogate potential prisoners of war from North Korean side in Ukraine. This part they have not confirmed yet about sending an interrogation team, but very high-level official yesterday mentioned that it is something South Korea has to consider doing because they do have to consider potentially wooing North Korean soldiers to defect to South Korea and so on and so forth, and give out information about North Korean warfare tactics there.
All right, sounds good. All right, let's move on to the next topic real quick.
Second topic is regarding China. China amended its anti-espionage law. When was it?
It was in April last year.
And then there is now not reportedly because they confirmed it, the foreign ministry, I believe.
The foreign ministry spokesperson confirmed it on Tuesday.
Right. There is now this first known case of a South Korean national being impacted by this new law because of allegedly industrial espionage. Can you walk us through it?
Right. The Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson confirmed on Tuesday that they have detained a South Korean national.
For the past year?
Since late last year.
Now,
this person was working for a Chinese semiconductor firm, and at least according to what the Chinese officials are saying, this person was trying to send back sensitive information from that company toward South Korea. Now, usually when we talk about technology leaks or technology espionage or industrial espionage, it's usually about how the Chinese
The other way around.
individuals or South Korean individuals who are working for Chinese companies are trying to steal technology from South Korean companies and handing it over to the Chinese firms.
Right.
But right now, this has happened. This is flipped, and now a South Korean national has been detained. Now, what this is likely to do in South Korea is going to really start to push once again a lot of moves to updating our anti-espionage
Right,
laws.
that's been quiet since the Sumi Terry case sort of
Died down a little bit.
Yeah, died down a little bit. And there were multiple bills that I wrote about for KoreaPro.org. If you're not a subscriber yet, please subscribe. I wrote about this a month ago, I think, about how South Korean...
It was in the
DP
summer and sometime
Right.
in August.
Oh, it's been a while. Well, opposition party and the ruling party both had different bills regarding updating the South Korean version of the anti-espionage law. So far, the focus is just on the enemy, which is North Korea. So when it comes to other countries like Russia or China, do we make them into de facto enemy state or quasi-enemy state, or are we not able to just state who they are? There has been a lot of controversy surrounding that.
Well, from what Han Dong-un, the People Power Party leader, has been just saying yesterday, he was saying that South Korea should update this anti-espionage laws, but instead of talking about quasi-enemy state or enemy state or or whatever term that they're really trying to get over, what Han Dong-un was saying that let's update it to say all countries. Get rid of the word enemy, get rid of the quasi-enemy, just say all countries.
That's actually similar to the DP version.
Exactly.
He actually sounds like DP a lot these days.
He is not, well, there's a reason why the president and Han Dong-un does not seem to be getting along.
Yeah, exactly. But going back to the industrial espionage detainment, what is the implication for this specific individual?
Well, right now, the South Korean Foreign Ministry has been very quiet about this. We do know because of what the Chinese government has said, that the Chinese government has allowed the South Korean detainee to have access to consular services. So I'm sure that the South Korean government is working to represent this person in the Chinese courts if or when there is actually going to be a trial for this person. But right now, as usual, when it comes to China, South Korea is always being very quiet about this because they don't want to upset Beijing. But eventually it's going to have to come down to it, because we cannot just simply sit idly by while China is now detaining South Korean nationals, well, singular at least for now, but this might happen again in the future.
So it could become a diplomatic issue.
It can become diplomatic issues because, as we've just said before, there have been numerous instances of South Korean technologies being stolen by people working for Chinese firms. And so will South Korea just continue to debate over and over again as to how this law should be updated? And no, eventually this law will be updated. And when it does get updated, eventually people who are of Chinese citizenship might get arrested and detained in South Korea for the same reasons.
And also, if the National Assembly end up going for the DP version, and now it sounds like Han Dong-hoon's version, this might actually have implications for not just China,
but for everyone else, yes.
Exactly. And lastly, just stepping back a little bit, can you explain a little bit how South Korea and China are rivals when it comes to this specific sector, semiconductor?
Well, both countries, and it's not just South Korea and China, of course, it's also Taiwan, it's also the United States. Every single one of these countries have semiconductors, and especially high-end semiconductors, HBM, high bandwidth memory chips, as part of their core national strategies, because these chips are what's required for AI. And so because of this extremely vital nature of this technology, all of these countries are competing with each other. It's an arms race.
Right.
The only difference is that these ones don't go kaboom, at
Just
least not
chips
directly.
race.
Exactly.
But sometimes they do go kaboom because they are included into guided weapons. But anyway,
potato. But right now, both countries are very sensitive about their technology. They're trying to protect their turf as much as possible.
Right.
Some people are being more successful than others. But
he did an eye roll.
Yes, I did my eye roll in case, well, you couldn't see it anyway, but I told you now. But yes, because of the competition that exists between all of these countries. Now, yes, there is tech espionage between the South Korea and the US as well, I'm sure. But the US and South Korea are still allies.
Right.
Between South Korea and China, things are a little more dicey.
Right, and South Koreans could very easily, the public opinion could go down the road of like, they did it to us. Why are you not doing anything to China? Right?
Exactly.
Last topic, this was just last night, so John had to quickly update the executive briefing for our subscribers. There is, from South Korea's point of view, a concerning development when it comes to the Czech nuclear power plant deal.
Well, when you said it's concerning for South Korea, at least as far as the South Korean government is saying, they are saying that they are not concerned.
Right.
But what happened was that last night, that's on Wednesday at around 10 p.m., there was breaking news that says that the Czech Anti-Monopoly Office, which is the UOHS, they have issued a provisional measure where they temporarily halted the contract between KHNP, that's Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power, along with the CEZ. The CEZ being the Czech majority state-owned utility, where they both agreed to have KHNP be the preferred bidder to build their latest nuclear power plant. And the reason why they paused it is because of the legal complaints from Westinghouse Electric, the American energy company, and EDF, the French energy company. And these companies are saying, especially Westinghouse, are saying that the KHNP is not allowed to export this technology to any other country. And that's because Westinghouse is saying that it infringes upon their property rights.
Right, so they are they're implementing what they said they are going to do.
Exactly. And right now, both the Czech Republic and South Korea are saying that this is a temporary measure. And what the presidential office just said earlier this afternoon was that this will in no way alter the course that has already been taken. Because we have to remember, last month, President Yoon visited the Czech Republic. He met with the Czech president, prime minister. He met with the members of the Senate. And they've had multiple MOUs, not just about nuclear power, but also regarding hydrogen. And so there's a lot of gears that have been moving between Seoul and Prague.
Right.
And so, at least as far as the South Korean government is saying publicly, they're saying we're not concerned about this. But we should be concerned because what the CEZ is saying is that they want to finalize this contract negotiations by March of next year.
Oh.
And right now, the presidential office said, I think about a month or 2 months ago, that they are in negotiations with Washington about this entire Westinghouse complaint. But, of course, there is no progress there because, as we already said earlier, the elections are just a week away. And depending on who wins, this could really shift U.S. policy.
Exactly.
And Joe Biden, being the outgoing president, would be irresponsible to make such a huge decision when he is not going to be around in a few months' time. And so he's keeping things quiet as the way they are. So even if this gets done immediately after the next president is sworn in, this will take place in January. But regardless of whether it is Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, both candidates are very protective of U.S. business interests. And so will Harris or Trump be as conducive to listening to Seoul's concerns when there is a U.S. company that's saying that they want to export their technology for billions of dollars to the Czech Republic? And so this March deadline is very important. Will South Korea be able to convince Washington to side with them to come up with some sort of a partnership agreement between Westinghouse and KHNP? This
sounds challenging.
It's very challenging, and it's a much larger concern than what the presidential office is at least publicly saying that it is.
So what I'm gathering here is when they say it's not of concern, what they really mean probably is we are concerned, but please don't be concerned, dear public, because this has been the trade issues. It has been one of the only reason for keeping the current very low, though, the South Korean president's approval rate.
And we also have to remember that if this goes belly up, if March comes and goes and there is still no contract, we have to remember that the Czech Republic is not the only European country that South Korea wants to export nuclear reactors to. They also want to export it to Poland and Romania. If it doesn't work in the Czech Republic, these other two countries are going to also say, well, if Westinghouse is coming out with this complaint and the Czech Republic had to stop, then who are we to keep this going with KHNP as well? And so the entire ambition to export nuclear reactors to Europe might just crumble.
Right. So it could set a very unfortunate precedent for KHNP in South Korea. And we will keep an eye on this.
Introducing Korea Pro, your all-in-one South Korea intelligence solution. Start each day with our executive briefing on the most crucial issue and a snapshot of key Korean and international headlines. Gain deeper understanding through our original analysis on South Korea's economy, politics, security and society. Our Monday Week Ahead newsletter prepares you for upcoming business and political events, while the weekly podcast keeps you informed on recent developments. Get clear, actionable business intelligence every day. Visit koreapro.org/podcast and never be sidelined again.
Week ahead. Anything going on next week?
Oh, nothing. Nothing's going on
Nothing's
next
going on.
week.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
Just some people in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin deciding the fate of the rest of the world. That's all.
So nothing burger, really.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's US elections, November 5th, local time. But considering the situation right now, I'm guessing that it will take long to actually, for the result to come out. So
It really depends on how the Electoral College votes. If it's
Right.
razor thin, then it might take weeks. I remember back in 2000 when Al Gore and George W. Bush were running, it took months for them to figure who won. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. Hopefully it won't go that far and they'll be able to figure out within at least a day or two who is going to become the next U.S. president. But
hopefully, because we are hoping that the result will come out at least November 7th sometime.
in Korea time.
Korea time, because we are having a Seoul circuit event to discuss the implications for South Korea, the result of U.S. elections. So hopefully, if the results come out, John, me, and Soo-young-oh from Arirang TV, senior correspondent for presidential affairs, will be talking about the issue. But even if the results aren't clear by that time, we could still discuss.
And regardless, it'll be a good time anyway, so please sign up for the event. And all of this information will be sent to your email inboxes by 2 p.m. on Monday, so please subscribe. Have a good weekend, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why they matter every morning in your inboxes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for your weekly dose of insight. And until next time, I'm Jeongmin Kim.
And I'm John Lay. Stay connected, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on the Korea Pro Podcast.